Good evening, everyone. This is Professor Giles again for AR105, and we are in Chapter 9, and this is the only chapter to cover this week. A couple reasons for that. One is the midterm. Didn't want to pack up with a lot of reading for this week, but also because there is so much in this one chapter. If you look at the chapter in the book, it's just a normal chapter, about the same number of images, about the same time period. But what I want you to see here is this is probably the most important time for art history, to look at art. Classical Greek was probably one of the most innovative times, going from the archaic artwork, especially in the sculpture area, but and then progressing so far into you're just trying to show realism for the first time in history, which they achieved. But very quickly they went from, oh, realism, we can do the human body. We can show the human body at rest, then in movement. And then for the artist, that sort of gets boring. So they have to go over the top with it. And that's how we got into Hellenism and twisting and turning and emotion and all that. So that's a great time. But here at the Renaissance, it's recapturing the greatness of the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. As you know by now, Renaissance means rebirth. Now, a couple things here I want you to realize, that the people at the time didn't know they were in a Renaissance. Renaissance is a made-up word by art historians in the late 1800s to sort of designate that time, okay? And rebirth is what they came up with. You can do some studies and find out exactly which art historian came up with this word, Renaissance. But for Michelangelo, for Da Vinci, they were just living. They were just doing their work. And they had no idea that they were in this actually spectacular time of excellent growth in the arts. So that's a little preamble here. Now, because it's only one chapter, don't assume that there's going to be very little to do, because I'm actually going to expand quite a bit on what the book gives you, because I think it's very valuable to see more than just a couple works by Da Vinci, more than just 3 or 4 works, or 3 works by Michelangelo. So I'm going to show quite a bit more. I'm not going to go into detail on them, but just so that you see them. And there are several sites to go to see Michelangelo's complete works, Da Vinci's complete works. You can get online and see all that. I'll go through them somewhat quickly. We're not going to go totally in depth and get all strange on you here. It'll still be light. Okay? So as we go on, one thing that I do want to point out here, if you are a reader, if you enjoy what you're learning in this class, and you might want to read a couple books, here's a set of books by an author named Ross King. And I came across his stuff probably maybe 10 years ago. And he writes in a very readable way, and he talks about the arts, but he narrows it down into certain topics. And here are just some images that you can find on Amazon of his books. We've already talked about Brunelleschi's dome in Florence, the dome of the Duomo. You can see that image here. That is just an excellent book. So is Michelangelo and the Pope's Ceiling. We'll be talking about Michelangelo tonight. And that really talks about, all of these actually, talk about more than just that individual work, like the dome or the Pope's Ceiling, or even the Last Supper, which actually I'm about 3/4 of the way through right now. It talks more about the culture, it talks about the artist's life, and what led up to this great masterpiece. So if you like what you're reading, maybe for the summer, sometime in the future, remember the name Ross King. I highly, highly recommend his work. It also goes into Impressionism here and the impact that it had. And then if you're into political intrigue, he has a really great book, again, very readable, on Machiavelli. That's just something that you can get into. Now, I've already taken over 5 minutes here, so let's go quickly. I'm going to try to get this done in either 2, maybe 3 15-minute lectures. We'll see how it goes. So here we go. So, oh, yes, remember, your museum paper is due May 3rd, not the final week, but the week before. Make sure that you look at the rubric, understand it. If you have any questions whatsoever, please contact me. Instead of going to a museum, which I understand is about an hour and a half away, which isn't too far, but just to help you out, we're not going to go to the museum. Actually, I have you go to the websites of the museums listed on the rubric, on the assignment sheet. Do not wait until the last day to do this. It's going to be very important that you understand the assignment and that you move with it and that you can write it very well, because this really is the capstone for the class. If I remember right, it's worth, what, 250 points? So really it's about a fourth or so of your grade. All right, so just a reminder. So, okay, so let's get going. Hallmarks of the High Renaissance in Italy. As we already went over, the rebirth is what the word Renaissance means. And this was especially in Florence, underneath the Medici, one of the families that somewhat controlled Florence, looking back at the philosophy, at the art, at the poetry of the classical age, the Greeks and the Romans, and trying to bring that forward and have that rebirth in it. So there's also an artistic revolution. We saw it going on in Northern Europe, and now we have it going on in Florence and Rome. And really, it's like 25, maybe 30 years, around the late 1400s into 1527, 28 or so. It really is this very small, compact time of just rich imagination, great composition. The main thing here is harmony and balance, that there's beauty being brought out, that the scale and the heads being the correct size to go on bodies, and very different than what we saw during the Gothic time. Okay, so it's a progression out of that to achieve reality. That's really what they're trying to do. So they have unprecedented control of what? The form and the shapes, of color, of media, the proportions look right, lighting and shading and new technologies and techniques going on, showing space, going back from foreground to background that actually looks three-dimensional perspective, anatomy. Finally, artists are able to do dissection and understand more about the body other than just observation. Okay, so, and then we'll get into who's who. We've got Florence, Leonardo and Michelangelo, north of Rome. Down in Rome, you've got Raphael and Michelangelo. And then up in Venice, Titian, Tintoretto, Veronese, and others in there. We'll look at most of those. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and show you a map, and then we're going to do the introduction on another video. So this video lecture is just going to be a preamble. So here's Europe around 1500 or so. We're really going to be concerned with this area here. Here's Rome on the boot of Italy. The Papal States is this area. This is land that the Pope or the Catholic Church owns. Uh, Florence controls an area here. Here's Vinci. This is the birthplace of Leonardo da Vinci. His name is Leonardo. Where is he from? From Vinci is what Da Vinci means. So it's nearby to Florence, but he really spent a lot of time there in Florence. Milan is up here. Here are the Alps. Here's Venice up in here. And later on in Mannerism, we'll talk about Spain. We'll talk a little bit about Venice up here. Okay, so that gets you an idea of that. Now, notice France is here. Here's a Holy Roman Empire. Kingdom of Naples over here. The King of France comes down to attack Naples. And that causes havoc all over Italy that we'll see later, and really, in many people's minds, and I think the evidence shows it, that caused the end of the Renaissance, at least the High Renaissance. Yes, art kept going. There's still innovation going on, but really the horrible things that happened during that time really put an end to the optimism that had been going on for about 30 years or so. So in the next lecture, we'll talk a little bit more about that and talk most definitely about Leonardo and Michelangelo.